Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Gabriella. If you're not new here, welcome back. Thank you for joining me again today. I am still on my webcam. We're not going to talk about it. I have a new setup planned, so good things are to come for this channel, but hopefully I sound okay for you. If you're listening to the audio only version, hey, how are ya? Let's get into today's case. At 11 a.m. on April 1st, 2014, in Panama, two Dutch students went out on a hike with their host dog. The dog came back, but the women never did. Today we're going to be covering the case of Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon. Kris Kremers, who was 21, and Lisanne Froon, who was 22, were two young students from the Netherlands. They worked in a local cafe to save up enough money for a 6 weeks trip to Panama. The vacation was a celebration as they had both recently graduated, but they were also planning to do some volunteering and learn Spanish. On March 15th, 2014, they finally arrived in Panama. During their first 2 weeks, they explored the city and enjoyed their vacation. And after that, they checked into their new accommodation, where they would stay with a host family for the next 4 weeks. The women wanted to see as much of Phuket as possible, hiring a guide to show them around on April 2nd, 2014. The day before the guided tour, however, they decided to explore the area around the active Baru volcano towards the Continental Divide. According to a geographical expert, the 3-mile stretch is relatively easy to explore, and most missing tourists return without assistance or come across search parties looking for them. Kris and Lisanne set out into the forest along the Pianista Trail at around 11 a.m. on April 1st, 2014, with only a backpack between them. They also took along the host dog, Blue, with them. Later that night, the dog returned home to the host family all alone, and there was no sign of the girls. That night, the host family contacted the girls' parents to let them know they had not returned home. Understandingly, the parents became very worried at this point and contacted the police. On the 6th of April, they traveled down to Panama to look for the girls themselves, along with the police. They searched the jungle for 10 days straight and found absolutely no sign of the girls. It wasn't until the 14th of June 2014 that Lisanne's backpack was found, when an indigenous couple were hiking in the same jungle, came across the backpack and handed it over to police. The backpack was found a long way from where the girls originally planned to hike, and it still contained their belongings, such as their bikinis, cash, both of their phones, and their camera, among a few other items. After finding the women's phones, police now had a lead. Once they examined the phones, investigators unraveled a confusing and grim timeline. The phones remained active for nearly 10 days after the pair went missing. During this time, Kris and Lisanne reportedly called for help. They called 112, the emergency number for the Netherlands, as well as Panama's emergency number 911. They made numerous calls to emergency services a few hours into their hike. Logs show they were only able to connect once due to poor reception in the forest. This connected call was stable roughly for 2 seconds. After the attempted calls, the phone stayed on for some time. Kris's locked phone showed someone entering a wrong PIN several times. Kris's phone was powered on one last time on April 11th. Both phones went dead afterwards. Given the timeline, authorities assumed that at least one of the women was still alive at the time, 5 days into the search. The girl's camera showed evidence of what may have happened. More than 100 pictures were on the camera. The first few looked like normal touristic photos with the women smiling together. However, the ton of pictures began to change. One showed Kris with what looked like concern on her face, dated around the time of the emergency calls. After this, the photos were from April 8th and likely snapped between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. They were of seemingly random objects like a stick with plastic sticking to it, as well as scenes of foliage, canyons, and a bridge. Experts proposed several theories of why the woman took these photos. The arbitrary pictures looked focused, as if steady hands took the shots, suggesting they were intentional. Perhaps the photos served as a trail marker to help the young women find their way around or back to the rescuers. Because of the dark, the pair might have used the camera flash as a light source or to scare away animals. Others suggested neither Lisanne nor Kris took those photos. They believed someone abducted the women. Lisanne's parents requested authorities to refrain from releasing all of the photos from the camera to the public. Allegedly, some pictures depicted Kris and Lisanne in a rough state. During a Panama-based TV program's broadcast, the newscasters accidentally leaked some photos, and this happened again on a Dutch TV program. The second show featured a photo focusing on the back of a person's head, suspected to be Kris. The image appears to show an injury on Kris's head, with blood on her hair. This led to speculation about how Kris suffered an injury during the hike, and Lisanne perhaps used the camera for light, or to document Kris's last known whereabouts before seeking help. If harm came to Kris, the photos could have intended to help rescuers determine her location based on visual markers. After the discovery of the backpack, the search for the young woman began again, this time in a different area. Authorities investigated along the Rio Culebra, aka the Serpent River, near the village of Alto Romero. This was far from the trail that Kris and Lisanne originally set out for, meaning they either got lost or changed their itinerary. This time the search turned up something: Kris's clothing, neatly folded and arranged on the river's edge. The shorts appeared zipped and folded, placed above the waterline about a half-mile upstream from where the local tribal woman allegedly found the backpack. Curiously, the garments showed up on the opposite side of the river from where the woman took all of their photos. 2 months after discovering Kris's clothing, further searches finally turned up human remains. Searchers found a shoe behind a tree along the river where the backpack reportedly appeared. It contained a sock, an intact human foot, and ankle bones, with enough intact for DNA testing. By the end of August 2014, DNA tests linked the foot to Lisanne. Investigators later uncovered more bones and bits of skin, numbering up to 33 skeletal fragments. While the young women were evidently dead, none of the evidence explained how they died. The bodies were in pieces, likely scattered by the river over time. Much was lost. No marks on the bones indicated damage, and some of the bones appeared bleached. The only other suggestion of injury was through Lisanne's foot, although a broken foot wouldn't have killed her. Authorities faced a struggle of trying to determine why and how the women died. They began looking for persons of interest, and they tried to figure out if the women had any company besides the dog. The innkeeper they spoke to said Lisanne and Kris were alone and had asked for directions before the hike. At this point, no one was with them. However, the police learned later from a Facebook post that the pair met with some people before the trip. In the post, Lisanne and Kris said they had shared brunch with 2 Dutch men on the last day before anyone saw the women. However, no reports cropped up about these 2 men. Some theories regarding their disappearance were that maybe they were attacked by animals. That's the most common theory. However, according to experts, there were no signs of animal scavenging on the bones. The next theory would be leaning towards the Mexican cartel. The bones were apparently bleached by phosphorus, or lime, which isn't found in soil. An expert stated that he believes that the Mexican cartel were involved in their disappearance, and noted that lime is typically used for speeding up the decaying process. Another theory is that they passed away from natural elements. This is possible. They only had 1 bottle of water between them, and the weather wasn't great. It was actually raining quite hard. It's thought that if they got lost, and that's why they ended up so deep inside of the jungle. By March 2015, almost a year after Kris and Lisanne traveled to Panama, investigators at last reached their conclusion. Their research into the case suggested that the women most likely suffered from some sort of accident along the trail, but became lost in the forest. Lisanne had supposedly fallen a great distance and either died in or near the river. Her foot would support this theory, Experts said that the breaks in the ankle and foot could only occur from a fall from a great height. The photos taken showed the date of when the woman tried to contact emergency services, likely after Kris suffered an injury. But in the dark, they couldn't find their way back. Lisanne died trying to exit the forest, leaving Kris dying or dead. The remains then decomposed. Thanks to the rain and river, they ended up scattered miles away. There was finally a resolution to the mystery, and the case could rest. But still, some people weren't so sure. Many claimed that the Panamanian authorities botched their handling of the case. A writer for the Panama paper La Estrella said that the whole thing was a mess. She reported that there was no chain of custody established for the recovered evidence or remains. She also said that the 30 prints found in the backpack not only remained unidentified, but that none of the indigenous people involved with the case had their prints recorded. She voiced further concern over the investigation of the electronics, saying that the condition of the equipment found was inconsistent with the place where it turned up. The lack of damage to the equipment was suspicious, but the police didn't investigate this matter, and they also failed to scrutinize a photo deleted off the camera. Lawyer Enrique Arocha, who works for the Kremers family, voiced concern about the handling of evidence. He claimed that there wasn't a forensic investigation conducted at the crime scene and that the evidence and its sources remained unverified. Furthermore, still lost are the women's skulls and other major bones, which may reveal a more definitive cause of death. Because of this evidence mishandling, conspiracy theories and suggestions of cover-ups by police and government gained steam. Others suggested that the deaths are possibly the work of cartels or organ traffickers, which would explain why the bodies were in pieces. While there are plentiful theories about what truly happened, one common theme revolves around the government and authorities in Panama intentionally keeping quiet. Why would they do this? Some experts and others involved in the case say it was all done in the name of tourism, which brings a lot of revenue to Panama. The idea of Panama as dangerous is potentially harmful to tourism, so it's more convenient to conclude that these women died from an accident. In 2017, journalist Adela Coriat expressed the same opinion to the Daily Beast. It's a sad fact, but serious investigation was never done. Everything had to be hushed up to protect tourism. I want tourists to come to Panama too, but the government must still do its job. The victims deserve justice, and the families deserve to know what really happened. Between 2009 and 2017, 24 other tourists have gone missing in this area or turned up dead. A revisiting of the case in 2017 brought up enough evidence to suggest that these disappearances, including those of Lisanne and Kris, may have been linked to a serial killer. Leaked law enforcement reports suggested someone dismembered young women and scattered their remains deliberately, which may have happened to others as well. Previously, authorities said that the river and scavengers scattered the remains, but the Chiriquí State Judicial Report indicated otherwise. The report said after an 18-month investigation, the evidence pointed to homicide. Internet groups continue to research the disappearances, though authorities can reopen the case at any time. Given how many years have passed, no one can unequivocally explain what happened to Lisanne and Kris in the forests of Panama. And that brings us to the end of today's case. I want to know what you think about this case because it's one that deeply puzzles me. All the different theories that come up, I can see it going in each of those ways. So there's not one that I can pick and kind of lean more towards. So I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below. And if you have a case that you'd like me to cover in an upcoming video, please leave it in the comments below as well. So I want to say thank you for watching. If you made it this far in the video, please give it a like. Please subscribe, and you can also turn on the bell to be notified whenever I post, which is usually every Sunday. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.